Hi guys, welcome to the next video on the chapter Print Culture and the Modern World. In the previous video we discussed about the new forms of publication. In this video we'll be discussing about the print and the censorship related to India. Now, before the 1800s, so what was happening was that English East India Company wasn't too concerned with the censorship. So they didn't try to control the print. Instead, their censorship was directed against the Englishmen in India who were critical of the company misrule. So it was not against the vernacular prints, it was more against the Englishmen who had been critical of the English rule. So their censorship was primarily related to that. So they were worried that such criticism would be used by critics to attack the trade monopoly which the English had at that time. So instead of focusing on the nationalists of India, they were focusing more on censoring the Englishmen who were critical of the East India Company. Then in the 1820s though, the situation changed dramatically when Calcutta Supreme Court under the British government passed regulations to control the press freedom. So they actually wanted only those publications which celebrated the British rule, and anyone who was criticizing the British rule was censored. So this was a huge decision by the Supreme Court in 1823, and this led to widespread censorship. But in 1835 there was a Press Act which was removed by Lord Metcalfe at that time, and he was hence called the liberator of Indian press when the press laws were revised by him. And among concerns from the various editors, he said that censorship should be limited and it should be removed wherever possible. So Metcalfe is the one in 1835 who relaxed the Indian press, and it led to flooding of the Indian markets with various publications. So in the revolt of 1857, the press played a huge role, and hence again the Britishers thought that censorship is needed. So their attitude towards the freedom of press again changed. The enraged Englishmen demanded stringent controls on the press, as vernacular newspapers had become nationalists. So they did not want another revolution in another revolt. Hence again new laws were passed. In 1878 the Vernacular Press Act was passed, where the government had to be provided with extensive rights to censor the content in vernacular papers. In a sense, it meant that anyone arguing with the British government was not allowed to print and publish the newspapers. So government kept regular track on what was inappropriate. Any newspaper that was deemed to be creating mischief among the people, creating a revolution, was banned after giving a warning. So this was the attitude of the English towards the press. So censorship was done in the 1870s after the revolt of 1857. But still, newspaper played a huge role in the years to come as well, when the newspapers at that time always were reporting on the colonial misrule. So it created a sense of unity among people when they were reading the various newspapers, and it encouraged the nationalist activity. So in a sense it united the people, and it gave them a platform to talk about various nationalistic ideas and ventures. So even the attempts to restrict the nationalist criticism provoked protests. So whenever the newspapers which were talking about nationalism were banned, there was widespread protest. An example is when Punjab revolutionaries were deported in 1907, Bal Gangadhar Tilak wrote in his famous Kesari newspaper, where he wrote about the misrule of the colonial rules, misjudgments and various atrocities that were done on the Indians. So when his newspaper was banned after his imprisonment, there was widespread protest. So even criticizing was, in a sense, the censorship could not be imposed wholeheartedly, and the ideas of nationalism were spread through the print media. So print media in itself played a huge role in the freedom struggle of India. So this is all about the print culture in India and the rest of the world and how it grew. Okay, so thank you so much.